All right. So this is just a little clip in, trying something new here. Uh, in advance, I know I'm probably going to be looking a little crazy because once I finish recording this, my face is going to be blurred out. And the reason why is because actually at my company, at my employer, we actually had someone get fired on my team. This past week. So I'm gonna come back to that, when I finish with my story. But anyhow, let me rewind. So a few days, so pretty much at the start of week 2, I'm in my course careers, working through the videos. Everything's going fine. As far as clearly, I knew that this week was me learning about Excel and how to do analysis as far as like data analytics, doing like some real deal analysis stuff in Excel. And so there was two things that actually happened to me this week. First, my one of my bosses, they was like, hey, this other person, this other, boss of another group, they looking for somebody who can, help out, who got, some hours. And it was basically going to be working with some data. Now my boss, I have not told my boss that I'm doing kind of personal, professional development. And so in this case, I'm familiar with this other let's call him supervisor. And I don't have no issues, with the person. So I was like, okay, yeah, sure, I'll help them out. I didn't know, what they was going to ask me to do. So of course I tried to set up a meeting, and then actually the person ended up, so we did, meet. They told me what they was wanting for me to do. And so actually for one of the things, so it was like 3 tasks that they needed me to do, but for one of them, it was going to actually need for me to basically manipulate some data using Excel, and then specifically because of some of those intro videos for the intro to Excel, I knew that using a pivot table was actually going to help me do like this particular task in a more efficient manner. Right now, before this whole course careers thing, I didn't know nothing about pivot tables. That was not my arena. And so, like I said, this is what I'm thinking in my head. So I'm excited. So anyhow, the time comes, and because it was so much data, like I had already told the other supervisor up front, like, look, I'm gonna need some time, to work through this. And so obviously I was able to secure, a pretty decent, amount of time, just because of how much, data it was going to require me to go through. So, anyhow, though, because of course careers, it ain't take me compared to what it would have, right? Because I didn't know. You don't know what you don't know. It really ain't take me no time. So, obviously with it being something new, of course, I got the answers that I needed. And then I did, take some time just to make sure, my work was going to be right. And so, like, for instance, we talking about something that, realistically, if I didn't know what I had ended up learning through course careers, as far as this whole Excel analysis, this joint I easily could have taken like a full week to actually work through it, manually, like I said, because the data was just so many. It was so many rows. You're talking about multiple, workbooks, because it's not, the data wasn't just in like kind of one single file or whatever like that. Now, basically, because of what I learned with Course Careers, it really only took me barely a day to get through it. But I'll just be conservative and say, a day. Because like I said, clearly, it's one thing when you just learn something and, you just want to be a little bit, like kind of correct. Like, okay, hey, this might have just seemed too easy. Maybe I done messed something up, and, I don't even know I messed it up. But anyway, so, but like I said, though, nah, I actually worked through it. Took me a day. Now, yes, it did saved me a lot of time. And this was a task that I had volunteered for. But heck no, I know what you're probably thinking. You're probably like, oh, did you, like what was basically their response? Now, no, I did not immediately go to them with the answers that, I had found. I basically took 2 days to, give them basically the results of what I found. That supervisor was very happy, with me, was very appreciative, just talked about, how much I had helped them. And something actually going back to week one, when they talk about, planning before you execute and actually completing the analysis. When I had talked to the other supervisor, they told me up front, that was part of the conversation. Of course, there was like certain for certain tasks, like they just needed like absolute answers for. But through the course of our conversation, they had also talked about, well, eventually, right, like where they wanted to get to, with the data, probably because they were expecting that, again, this isn't my purview, so it was probably going to take me a while. And so because of the efficiency that I gained from what I learned in CourseCareers, well, actually, I answered, like, when I put together my response, I actually answered the full question. Okay. So that was that. And so anyhow, so, I'm feeling, got my little, tap on the back, tapping myself on the back, I'm feeling real good. And then 2 days later, literally, like I said, this week has been crazy. But 2 days later, we normally have, a weekly, team meetings, throughout the week, kind of touch base, on different stuff. So it was time for our group weekly meeting. And so when the meeting starts, there's people in this meeting that don't normally be up in the meeting, if you understand what I'm saying. Management, certain management, HR. And so, of course, this particular team that I'm on, the majority of us, are remote. So it's only natural. Well, I can't speak for nobody else, but like I said, when you see somebody who don't normally ever come to your meeting, immediately I start clicking, I start scrolling, because it's a lot of people on the call. So I start scrolling to kind of be like, well, who don't look like, the rest of us? Who is missing? Who is missing? And so sure enough, they went through some other stuff, but then once they got to the meat of why these other people was in this meeting that normally wasn't, that normally don't come to our meetings, then they did, tell us how, the team member is, no longer with us, like effective immediately, effective that same day. And so, obviously, it was a shock, and everything. And but at the same time though, I can't lie. I was thinking like, oh my, goodness, like this is why they say, it's better for you to, be ready or get ready while you still, like if you're in a position where you are employed. But maybe there's some things of, hey, if I lose my job, is it quote unquote easy for me to find like another job in this particular field? Or do I need to just, start all over? Do I need to upskill? Like I said, in this case, one of the things that I feel like what I'm doing with CourseCareers is upskilling, myself. Because like I said, the type of stuff that I'm learning in this course is not really like in my, day-to-day normal, purview. And so obviously, I'm reviewing it, as I go along as well. Like I said, from my initial, first week, video, because quite frankly, I just didn't see a lot of, of I guess student, testimonials, pros and cons specific to data analytics. So anyhow, that's what happened with me with my week 2. So on one hand, it was very positive from a standpoint of, oh wow, I just learned something that I can literally put into practice at my current job without my bosses even knowing, but I could put it into practice at my current job. It saves me time. Then clearly, what, like I said, what it would have, that's no BS, that's no cap, because it was manual. And like I said, we're talking about thousands and thousands of rows of data. And again, if this isn't something that or that you normally deal with, then to me, the only way I would have been able to handle is I would have had to do manual stuff, versus the automation that I was able to learn. And so, one day I'm all like, okay, like, this isn't a waste of my time. And then, whop, it's like, hey, even though, it may not look like layoffs may be happening, at your company, again, stuff happens. And so ultimately, you just got to look out for yourself, and you got to put yourself first. You got to be honest, with yourself. And so, all I can say is that, if, tomorrow, a week from now, a month from now, whatever, if it ends up being, my name on the chopping block, like I said, hopefully what I'm doing, here with CourseCareers, and whatever other experiences that I have, from overall in my career, hopefully that's going to put me in a better position to maybe have some different options when I do have to look for a new job. So yeah, that's just my quick little clip of the emotions of the highs and lows of what happened with me during week 2.